All right, all praise, honor, and glory to our power, Yahweh. Bahasham Yahweh Shah, Bahasham Machak, Wadazdo, honors to the apostles, the bishops, and the elders of Great Millstone. Peace and blessings to the hopeful elect of the tabernacles of David scattered throughout the four corners of the earth, wherever you may be. Wherever you may be, Shalom, Yeshua, Shalom. All right, we're in Daniel chapter 3. All right, it says the king's golden image. All right, I believe it's going to say statue if you read like another translation. But that's pretty much what it's going into, this golden image here, as a matter of fact. Here it is. We get the word image, right? Tazalam is the word there in the Hebrew. So it's this image or idol, all right? As a matter of fact, let's go back and read, because it says Nebuchadnezzar, the king, made an image of gold, whose height was 60 cubits. Now a score is 20, so 60 would be 60, all right? And it says, in the breadth thereof 6 cubits. He set it up in the plain of Dura in the province of Babylon. Now, if I'm correct, Nebuchadnezzar's palace, or pretty much the place he would not, because of course they ruled over a certain amount of vast territory. And I believe, if I'm correct, his palace was in somewhere around modern day Iraq. So when it says it set up this image in the plain of Dura in the province of Babylon, this was probably set up somewhere around modern day, or well, not modern day, I mean ancient day Iraq, because I'm speaking of the area. It's like it'd be modern day Iraq, but the ancient area. He had his palace, he had the city Babylon, because you can look this up on the map. And then going into, as a matter of fact, let's do this. Let's see if we can pull up another one. So there's a statue 90 feet tall and 9 feet wide, and goes to show you that this is a natural thing for the heathens to do. You got the what is it, the Jesus statue, if I'm correct, is that in Brazil? Colossus of Rhodes, right? If you think about the Edomites back in the days, okay. Oh, come on now, the Statue of Liberty, all right. So this is a natural thing with the heathens, exalting themselves and the false gods that they worship. So this is no different dealing with Nebuchadnezzar, all right, this king of Babylon, Nebuchadnezzar II. So he made a statue 90 feet tall and 9 feet wide. So if you can visualize that, it's a pretty huge statue. And he says he set it up in the plain of Dura in the province of Babylon, all right, because everyone had to come together to worship. So, you couldn't have all people coming from all over inside the city, flooding the city out. So he set it up in the plains, all right, because that's what, a plain is. I don't know if we get anything from that, but you get the basic point, in open land, all right. You see a large area of flat land with few trees, because everybody had to come before the statue, right? So he set it up where there was room enough for everybody to come and worship, right? So it says, then he sent messengers to the high officers, officials, governors, advisors, treasurers, judges, magistrates, and all the provincial officials to come to the dedication of the statue he had set up. As a matter of fact, let's go back to in the KJV, because it says, as a matter of fact, let me see what else says here in Dura. Dawara, meaning dwelling, a place in Babylonia where Nebuchadnezzar set up the golden image, site and certain. So yeah, because they don't really know, right? But it's possible that it was in ancient, what is today modern day Iraq, okay, giving Nebuchadnezzar's kind of resting place, all right, his palace and such, right, in the city of Babylon and so on and so forth. So it says, then Nebuchadnezzar. So there's a statue 90 feet tall, 9 feet wide, right? And also, and when you think about it, because when you go back to verse 1, it says, he made an image of gold, whose height, and you talked about in the previous chapter, right? Okay, in the previous lesson about the image, that image was the head of gold, all right? And the head of gold represented that Neo-Babylonian Empire. Now, this is something very important to point out here, all right, about him setting up the statue and things of that nature. Because if you go back to, let me see here. If you go back to chapter 2, all right, and check this out. Let's see if I can find it here. Here we go. Daniel 2 and 27. Daniel answered in the presence of the king and said, the secret which the king hath demanded cannot the wise men, the astrologers, the magicians, the soothsayers shew unto the king. But there is a God in heaven that revealeth secrets, and maketh known to the king Nebuchadnezzar what shall be in the latter days. Thy dream and the visions of thy head upon thy bed are these. As for thee, O king, thy thoughts came into thy mind upon thy bed, what should come to pass hereafter, and he that revealeth secrets maketh known to thee what shall come to pass. Here's the key point here. It says, but as for me, this secret is not revealed to me for any wisdom that I have more than any living thing, but for their sakes that shall make known the interpretation to the king. Here it is. And that thou mightest know the thoughts of thy heart. You see, because his heart is his mind. So as I mentioned, when we went through this chapter here in chapter 2, the Lord, at least I think I mentioned it, all right? But anyways, the Lord pretty much already, in this chapter, he set in motion what we're about to read into, all right? To know the thoughts of your heart. And we go to start to read and find out that Nebuchadnezzar, instead of humbling himself down before the Lord, which the Lord would have extended his rulership without him doing what he did to him and so on and so forth, all right? But instead he lifted himself up in pride. So that's the key thing right there, right? And that thou mightest know the thoughts of thy heart. Your heart is your mind. So if we go back and read into chapter 3, it says, then Nebuchadnezzar the king sent to gather together the princes, the governors, and the captains, the judges, the treasurers, the counselors, the sheriffs, and all the rulers of the provinces. All right, which means that includes Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Okay, because they weren't exactly like high officials, but they got lifted up to a certain. As a matter of fact, it's probably at the end of this last chapter. Let's see if I can find it real quick. Okay, here we go. Yeah, it says, then the king made Daniel a great man and gave him many great gifts and made him ruler over the whole province of Babylon. So what's a province? Okay. District, all right? A province, all right? Let's go into district real quick. An area of a country or city, especially one regarded as a distinct unit because of a particular characteristic, all right? Divided into districts. So it would be the same, for province, right? A division of a country that has its own government. The province of Quebec has whatever. I don't need that. A province is a large administrative area within a country, similar to a state or county. All right, and so they're showing here America as an example. All right. So it says provinces have their own administration and can make autonomous decisions on various issues, such as road construction. They also implement certain national laws, like establishing nature preserves. The term province comes from the ancient Roman provincia, which referred to the Roman Empire's territorial possessions outside of Italy. All right, so you see, this is just a small, it's not the most, elaborate position, but this isn't a small thing, okay? So it says, made him ruler over the whole province of Babylon and chief of the governors of all the wise men of Babylon. Okay, so it says, then Daniel requested of the king, and he set Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego over the affairs of the province of Babylon. All right, it says, but Daniel sat in the gate of the king. Now, let me see what it says here. Let's see. So it just says to be in charge of all the affairs of the province of Babylon. So they're not exactly in the same position as Daniel. So Daniel operating over a province, and then Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego carrying out, some of the affairs of that particular province. So when he called everybody to them, that included Daniel and his companions, man. All right, from wherever they may have been. Okay, so it says to come to the dedication of the image which Nebuchadnezzar the king had set up, which is this golden statue. Now, I'm not sure if it was a golden statue of himself, probably, all right, or it could have been of, I don't know, of maybe Baal, because that was one of their major gods they worshiped, and so on and so forth. But the main thing here is talking about, the statue being set up, all right? That's the main thing, right? So it says, then the princes, the governors and captains, the judges, the treasurers, the counselors, the sheriffs, all right, which is basically like judges and stuff like that. Excuse me. see a magistrate, right? And the word there is shapat, which means judge, right? So it says, and all the rulers of the provinces were gathered together unto the dedication of the image that Nebuchadnezzar the king had set up. And they stood before the image that Nebuchadnezzar had set up. Then an herald cried aloud, to you it is commanded, O people, nations, and languages, right? Meaning everybody, right? Because Babylon conquered, took over many territories. Many people were under them, just like any other nation would do, okay? Just like today, especially like when you deal with the New Testament, why the churches are so confused. Because they don't understand that Israelites were scattered amongst the heathen nations. All right. So when it says Romans, it's talking about Israel, okay, that were scattered amongst the actual Romans. All right. Because even Paul had Roman citizenship, but he was an Israelite. See? So it says that at what time ye hear the sound of the cornet, flute, harp, sackbut, psaltery, dulcimer, and all kinds of music. All right. So, it kind of makes me think about what's that one movie? Uh Aladdin, okay, the last one that came out with who was Will Smith in it. He's marched to the city, make way, some whatever he said. All right, for the king, something that's like that. It makes you think about that. All right, and all this music playing. Okay, this they got this whole procession going. All right, all from the commandment of the king Nebuchadnezzar. All right. So it says that at what time ye hear the sound of the cornet, flute, harp, sackbut, psaltery, dulcimer, and all kinds of music, ye fall down and worship the golden image that Nebuchadnezzar the king had set up. And once again, remember that head of gold on that statue, right, represented Nebuchadnezzar II and Babylon, all right, the Neo-Babylonian Empire. Okay. And Daniel broke down that after your rulership, there was going to come another rulership after you. But in Nebuchadnezzar's pride, he didn't think like any other person does. All right, these kings of the earth do. They can hear the prophecy. All right, but in their mind, just like Esau today, in their mind, they're going to keep forwarding their kingdom. They're going to keep going past whatever set course that the Lord has for them. In their mind, that is. And that's the same thing that not Babylon, but Nebuchadnezzar was thinking. Okay, he after hearing the prophecies and praising Daniel and praising the Lord and all these different things, and he still seeped right back into his pride and thinking, all right, this is of me. Okay, so watch what happens as we keep reading. So it says, and whoso falleth not down and worshipeth shall the same hour be cast into the midst of a burning fiery furnace. So whoever doesn't want to worship this image I've set up here in the plain of Dura, all right, I'm going to cast into the fire. Therefore, at that time, when all the people heard the sound of the cornet, flute, harp, sackbut, psaltery, and all kinds of music, all the people, the nations, and the languages fell down and worshipped the golden image that Nebuchadnezzar, the king, had set up. So everybody that was under his rulership had to bow down to this thing when they heard all the music playing, okay? And that's exactly what they did. Another example, you think about what like these people going to the Hajj pilgrimage and all this kind of stuff like that, or they dancing around the cobblestone. Not saying they were out there dancing and stuff, but you had all the flute music type of mess going. You can kind of picture, okay, except for everybody's bound down, all right, like to worship the statue, okay. So it says, worship of the image refused. Wherefore at that time certain Chaldeans came near and accused the Jews. They spake and said to the king Nebuchadnezzar, O king, live forever. Thou, O king, hast made a decree that every man that shall hear the sound of the cornet, flute, harp, sackbut, psaltery, and dulcimer, and all kinds of music, shall fall down and worship the golden image. Now, keep in mind that when a king makes a decree, he can't go back on his word, all right? That's not just Nebuchadnezzar II, any king, all right? It's a well-known thing that when a king makes a decree, they cannot go back on their word. It makes them look weak, and, someone might uprise against them, or others might want to come like, hey, they did it, hey, you changed it for them, me too, all right? That's unjust. It's not just, it's unfair, whatever. So there's many things that can come for that. So when a king makes a decree, and he signs that thing, or, seal it with his signet, or whatever the case may be, all right, writing or whatever, all right, he cannot go back on his word. All right. And the word is, you worship this statue at the sound of the music playing, or I'm going to cast you into the fire. Right. So it says, whoso falleth not down and worship it, that he should be cast into the midst of a burning fiery furnace. There are certain Jews whom thou hast set over the affairs of the province of Babylon, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Right. So now we find out who these Jews were that they spotted out. Right. Which probably came. Well, then again, it could have been different guys. I was going to mention in one of the previous chapters. They were probably jealous. All right. But then again, it was probably some whole other guys. All right. But it really doesn't matter. It says, these men, O king, have not regarded thee. They serve not thy gods, all right, with little g, these false gods, Baal being one of them, okay? Daniel's name was given after it, Belteshazzar, all right, Baal, all right? So it says, nor worship the golden image which thou hast set up. Then Nebuchadnezzar, in his rage and fury, commanded to bring Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Bear with me. So like, it's kind of a ongoing emergency situation right now, but I do want to get this lesson out, and I'm trying not to rush it. Okay, so what are we talking about? Okay, Daniel 3:13. Then Nebuchadnezzar. Okay, yep. Talking about bringing. Yep. Then Nebuchadnezzar, in his rage and fury, commanded to bring Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Then they brought these men before the king. All right. So basically, and I'm pretty sure, maybe not. He remembered Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Not sure. He most definitely knew who Daniel was. All right. But anyway, as the case may be, he wanted to know who these three men were. Okay. Which goes to show you, they weren't really around Daniel, right? Once again, of course, Daniel's not going to bow to the statue either, all right? Just because Daniel was not mentioned doesn't mean he bowed to the statue and it was only Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. That wouldn't make sense, all right? Because Daniel, like the books of Daniel, his life and his whole journey is mostly based off faith, all right? His fidelity to the Most High. He was a man of great faith, all right? So all of a sudden, he's just going to bow to a statue. That wouldn't make sense, all right? So don't think that Daniel bowed to the statue because he's not mentioned. This is just highlighting these three individuals, okay? So it says, Nebuchadnezzar spake and said unto them, is it true, O Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego? Do not ye serve my gods, nor worship the golden image which I have set up? Now, if ye be ready, that at what time, and this is crazy, it says, now if ye be ready, all right? And there's a big if right there. Little did Nebuchadnezzar know, if ye be ready, that at what time ye hear the sound of the cornet, flute, harp, sackbut, psaltery, and dulcimer, and all kinds of music, ye fall down and worship the image which I have made. Well, but if ye worship not, you shall be cast the same hour into the midst of a burning fiery furnace. And who is that power? That God that shall deliver you out of my hand. So two things here. He's not only threatening their lives to worship this false God, this image here, but he's also mocking the Lord. All right, what it's saying, Galatians 6 and 7. All right, don't be deceived. The Lord is not mocked. Okay. As a matter of fact, let me pull that one because that's a good one right there. Okay, because he's actually mocking the Lord. All right, saying what power is going to save you. All right, who can do anything against me throwing your asses to the fire? See, be not deceived. Galatians 6 and 7. The Most High is not mocked. For whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap. Now, of course, Nebuchadnezzar didn't get thrown into fire himself. All right, getting back what he tried to throw on them. But the Lord is going to plague him. Because once again, remember, we read that Daniel 2. It's going to be very important. That Daniel 2 in verse 30, right? It says to try his heart, know his mind, right? Okay, so let's keep reading. So it says, so he's threatening them, right, with death, right, to worship his false god. It says, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, verse 16, answered and said to the king, O Nebuchadnezzar, we are not careful to answer thee in this matter. And this is the same spirit that all of us, all right, especially those of us, because we don't know who, right, but we know some of us are going to end up in these concentration camps and things of that nature, because the scriptures talk about that, all right, should be brought before judges and rulers and so on and so forth, but think not what you're going to say, okay? And so we're not going to, Lord willing, have that spirit upon us, but we're not going to be careful of what we say to Esau, because one, for one, the Lord's going to put in our mouths what to say, and two, because we trust and fear the Lord, like it says in Matthew 10 and 28, fear not them that can kill the body and not the soul, but fear him that can kill the body and soul in hell. That's the Heavenly Father, Yahweh. Okay, so we're gonna face a similar situation. Might be death by fire, might be the guillotine, might firing squad, whatever. It doesn't matter, right? And the thing is, which most brothers, all right, believe that, there's going to be no pain, all right, in that death, in that martyrdom, all right, just like Stephen, all right, Stephen, who was stoned, But we don't believe that Stephen felt pain, right? Because the Heavenly Father, He's in control of everything, right? He can leave your spirit in your body, okay, and have you go through it because that's part of your walk. But He can turn off the pain factor, which is a real thing. There's people out there, you can research it for yourself, that don't actually feel pain, all right? So He can turn off the pain factor, all right, in your body. So while they're stoning you, you don't feel anything, all right? Your body's still going to be affected as if you felt the pain, but you're not feeling the pain. Your body's just being affected. So you constantly, you're going to slowly get beat down. You'll fall to the ground, but you're not feeling the pain behind it because your body's just a body. You see? So let's keep reading. So it says, if it be so, our power, whom we serve, is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and He will deliver us out of thine hand, O King. Right? So they're telling them to His face. All right? Um, that it doesn't matter if you throw us in His fire. We're not going to worship your God, and our power, if He see fit, He will deliver us out of your hand, which is out of this fire. Okay. It says, but if not, okay, but if not, be it known unto thee, O King, that we will not serve thy gods. And that's the same thing we just talked about in these latter days in Jacob's trouble. Some of us are going to be martyrs, all right, and we're going to, those individuals, all right, are going to go out with the same spirit, man. Like, the Lord's going to deliver me, and if He don't, guess what? I'll see you again, okay? Shortly, okay, I will see you again. But we're not going to denounce the Lord, all right? And that's a wonderful spirit. All right, but it's not something that we can do of ourselves. All right, that's a spirit that we hope the Lord continues to have on us. Okay, so it says that we would not serve thy gods nor worship the golden image which thou hast set up. Then it goes on to say Daniel's friends are protected. All right, verse 19. So it says, then was Nebuchadnezzar full of fury, and the form of his visage was changed against Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. So he went from he's probably talking to him normal. Yeah, I heard you ain't do this and that. So, if you're ready, all right, you can bow down and worship now. All right. Because if not, I'm going to cast you into the fire. And then how is your God going to save you then? And then after they say what they said, now he was pissed. Okay. Because this is a king. All right. Remember now, he may be a heathen, but he's still a king now. So imagine you were a king and one of your subjects come talking to you like they run the kingdom. Oh, no, you tripping. Okay. So the word is anop. So it says face, all right, which face is punya. I'm correct, but let's see what this goes to. Up, nostril, nose, face, and there you go. Anger, all right, anger. So it keeps going back, same thing. See, to be angry, to be displeased, to breathe, are you? What did I just say? Like I just explained, right? You imagine you're the king, and one of your, as you see, as a lowly subject, just said what he said to you. What? Are you tripping? Do you know who you talking to? You find out I'm the king, right? Yeah, he's what? So let's go back. Let's find out what he said. All right. So it says, therefore he spake and commanded that they should heat the furnace 7 times more than it was wont to be heated. So in other words, however hot, it doesn't specify. We don't know. Okay. So however, I don't know. Let's just say we're burning at 350. Okay. So 7 times more than 350. So, just imagine, all right, how big of a, blast of heat this was. All right. It says, and he commanded the most mighty men that were in his army to bind Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. So he wanted to make sure they weren't going to escape and to cast them into the burning fiery furnace. Then these men were bound in their coats, their hosen, and their hats, and their other garments. So all the clothes they had on, the undergarments, their tunics, all right, their hats, because you gotta remember they were Babylonian captives, right? So they were probably wearing Babylonian garments, not by choice. They didn't have a choice, all right, but they were wearing Babylonian garments. But I can almost guarantee you, if they had to pray or whatever, the case may be, they would take whatever was on their head off, unless of course, it was open, because you have some turbans that are covered and some turbans that are open, depends on the design. But yeah, whatever though, you get the point. It says, and their other garments, all right, and were cast into the midst of the burning fiery furnace. Okay, and I want to let's get that real quick because we're not gonna hang on it, but I want to make a good point here because this is good to read here. So we go over to here it is, prayer of Azariah. All right, we go into this chapter here. Let's just get down here to the nitty gritty right here. It's only one chapter. Verse 23 says, "And the king's servants that put them in ceased not to make the oven hot with rosin, pitch, tow, and small wood." All right. So basically, which I don't know exactly what rosin is. So I can look that up real quick. But everything else, things that well equipped to burn and keep a fire. So it says resin, especially the solid amber residue obtained after the distillation of crude turpentine, oleoresin, or of naphtha extract from pine stumps. It is used in adhesives, varnishes, and inks, and for treating the bows of stringed instruments. Flammable oil containing various hydrocarbons obtained by the dry distillation of organic substances such as coal, shale, and petroleum. A natural or artificial mixture of essential oils and a resin. Example given. Okay, so turpentine, volatile pungent oil distilled from gum, turpentine, or pine wood, used in mixing plant paints and varnishes and in liniment. All right, any number of trees which yield turpentine or similar resin. All right, so you get the general idea here, right? So it says, and the king's servants, right? Let's get back here. Okay, that put them in ceased not to make the oven hot with rosin, pitch, tow, and small wood, so that the flame streamed forth above the furnace 40 and 9 cubits. Now I don't have any other translation for this. I do have the Good News Testimony. It may say something different, but we're not going to go into all that. But it goes to show you just how big of a fire, because it's heated sevenfold, right? And then big enough to, have just bursting up flames and shooting all crazy, which is why those men got consumed in the fire, as we keep reading. It says, and it passed through and burned those Chaldeans it found about the furnace. So the men that were cast, those mighty men, were wasted, all right? Because it says he brought some mighty men to bound them and throw them in the fire. And so before they even got into the furnace, the Lord was already protecting them with a force field. But those men got burned up, right? It says, but the angel of the Lord came down into the oven together with Azarias and his fellows, and smote the flame of the fire out of the ovens. And so when we go back to Daniel, we find out that this angel that was sent is Yahushua, right? It says, and this is something also important. It says he came down into the oven together with Azarias and his fellows, and smote the flame of the fire out of the oven, and made the midst of the furnace as it had been a moist whistling wind, so that the fire touched them not at all, neither hurt nor troubled them. So once again, all right, going into just the belief, which is just my belief, right? It's not like it's doctrine or whatever, but a force field, okay, around them, okay, or even if it wasn't a force field, it just made the fire not burn them, so it made the fire feel like it was cool, like it says here. So, but either way, the Lord came down and protected them directly, okay, which shows you these men were very loved, all right. Excuse me, okay. Then the three out of the mouth out of one mouth praised, glorified, and blessed the power in the furnace. All right, saying, right now, we're not going to read to all that because they're just going to a lot of prayer. But one thing I want to point out by reading that is they spoke all together with one mind at the same time. Like they just knew what each other were about to say, because everything that's said here down below, as you keep reading, they said it together. As it said in the scripture, they said it together. Just like you hear brothers, all right, like, call Allah, Yallah, call Allah, Yallah, how about you shot, right? Wait, how about you shot? All right. So they were speaking the same words together all at the same time. Shows you that the spirit was on them. All right. So I keep forgetting there's some pages at the top. Let me see. So if we go back to Daniel 3, pick back up. So it says, then these men were bound in their coats, their hosen, and their hats, and their other garments, and were cast into the midst of the burning fiery furnace. Therefore, because the king's commandment was urgent, and the furnace exceeding hot, the flame of the fire slew those men that took up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Because a lot of times, a fire, when it's first kindled, it'll be, bigger than what, its regular flame is sometimes, all right? Because sometimes it kind of settle, all right? And it says, and these three men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, fell down bound in the midst of the burning fiery furnace, which goes back to the prayer of Azarias, right? They started praying. There's a whole, it wasn't quick. Like they were in there for however long it took them to pray, okay? They were in the fire, okay? And then and I guess Nebuchadnezzar wanted to, just make ash out of them, right? So that's why it's good to read that chapter. It says then Nebuchadnezzar, because you get a bigger picture of what's going on here. It says then Nebuchadnezzar, the king, was astonished, right? Meaning what? All right, to be startled, to be alarmed, right? So it says, and rose up in haste and spake and said unto his counselors, did not we cast 3 men bound into the midst of the fire? They answered and said unto the king, true, O king. He answered and said, lo, I see 4 men loose. All right, 4 men loose, walking in the midst of the fire, and they have no hurt. And the form of the fourth is like the Son of God. All right, you see, going back to the prayer of Azarias. All right, the Lord sent an angel. Who was this angel? It was Yahushua, okay, who came down himself to deliver these men up. All right, and yeah, because we know, because it says that fourth is like the Son of God, and we know that's Yahushua, okay. Yeah, his form, right? You can get the word form, meaning what? His appearance, the way he looked, okay. So it says, then Nebuchadnezzar came near to the mouth of the burning fiery furnace, and spake and said, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, ye servants of the Most High power, Most High God, come forth and come hither. All right, come on out of there and come to me. Then Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego came forth of the midst of the fire. All right. It says, and the princes, governors, and captains, and the king's counselors, being gathered together, saw these men upon whose bodies the fire had no power, nor was in hair of their head singed, which is beautiful because it says the same thing in Luke, right? Luke 21, all right, given the time period that we're going into, okay? Wait, hold on. Yep. It says, ye shall be betrayed by both by parents and brethren, Luke 21:16, and kinsfolks and friends, and some of you shall they cause to be put to death, and ye shall be hated of all men for my name's sake, but there shall not an hair of your head perish. In your patience possess ye your souls. And that is an ancient account of this, all right? This scripture in verse 18, that's an ancient account, all right? Also, Daniel being thrown into the lion's den twice, okay? That's an ancient account of this scripture. And we have to have faith to believe that the Lord's going to do the same thing for us in these times, for those of us that are faced with that predicament. It says, nor was an hair of their head singed, neither were their coats changed, nor the smell of fire had passed on them. All right. So it didn't even smell like they got burned, because they didn't. Okay. But even just standing there without getting burned, you might think the smell of smoke or ash or whatever will be on them. None of that was on them. See, this was a pure, going in and going out. So verse 28 says, then Nebuchadnezzar spake and said, blessed be the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who hath sent his angel and delivered his servants that trusted in him, and have changed the king's word and yielded their bodies. You see, there it is right there. And have changed the king's word. Okay, because he says, I'm going to burn up anyone who doesn't want to worship the statue. All right, and he tried it to those Israelites, and it didn't work. Okay, it says, who hath sent his angel and delivered his servants that trusted in him, and have changed the king's word and yielded their bodies, that they might not serve nor worship any God except their own power. And the scriptures tell us that to offer our bodies as a living sacrifice. Okay, but I want to see what this says in another translation. Then Nebuchadnezzar said, praise to the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. He sent his angels to rescue his servants who trusted in him. They defied the king's command and were willing to die rather than serve or worship any God except their own God. Beautiful, you see? Because that's exactly how it's going to be for us in these latter days, man. We'd rather die than to stay here, worshiping, whatever this beast system or Esau or whatever else is going on in this world. No, we separate ourselves from this world, and it's going to become an even more major separation when that time comes to be pilgrims, right? So it says, and yielded their bodies that they might not serve nor worship any God except their own God with the capital G, the Heavenly Father Yahweh, Hashem Yahushua. Therefore, I make a decree that every people, nation, and language which speak anything amiss, meaning what? Neglect, remissness. Okay, same thing there. See the other word goes to make sure we got the right one. I believe we did. Actually, the same thing. All right, so bam, there you go. Okay, so yeah, speak anything amiss against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. So anybody says anything about the Heavenly Father, Yahweh, okay, it says, shall be cut in pieces, and their houses shall be made a dunghill, because there is no other God that can deliver after this sort. God with the big G, okay? Notice the difference there from these false gods, right? And idols, okay? The Heavenly Father, right, is a real power, all right? Hebrews 7 and 14, not Hebrews 7 and 14, Hebrews 10 and 31, it is a fearful thing to fall into the hands of the living power, all right? Again, the Lord will judge his people, okay? So there you go. It says, then the king promoted Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the province of Babylon. So they were at first over some affairs and things of that nature. All right, different business. Okay, different matters. All right, almost like probably some kind of administrative position, and now they're getting promoted even higher. Now Daniel, he was already directly in the king's courts, right? Okay, because of his like we said, passive ability, right? That extra gift, all right? Interpreting dreams and things of that nature, all right? And then also on top of that, he had different kinds of wisdom, all right? He learned obviously it was language, so he knew the Hebrew tongue, but he also learned the Assyrian, okay? And, different history regarding, Nebuchadnezzar and Babylon, and so on and so forth. So, Daniel was extra special, all right, to the king, okay? So yeah, that's the end of Daniel chapter 3. It's actually a pretty short and straightforward chapter, but it goes to show you the faith, all right, that these men had, all right, and that no matter what, okay, the Lord is going to deliver us. Because even if we don't, right, that means we go praising the Lord to our death, man, because that's a worthy sacrifice. As a matter of fact, let's end off with this one. Here we go. Let's jump over here. Beautiful. The Wadi Abishai, just think about it. All right. It says Romans 14:7, just get the points. For none of us liveth to himself, and no man died to himself. For whether we live unto the Lord, and whether we die unto the Lord. Whether we live, therefore, or die, we are the Lord's. All right. Lord willing, you will edify. Shalom.